An article from 1929 describes a new acquisition at the University Museum. Imagine, if you can, a jewel of 50 pounds weight, so beautifully cut and polished, and with so exquisite a shimmer of shadow and light that it appears a ball of almost gossamer fragility. It referred to the Dowager Empress, one of the largest crystal balls in the world, which today can be seen in the middle of the Chinese rotunda of the museum. Its story, as well as the story of its owner, is fittingly mysterious for such an object of wonder and magical powers that crystal balls often suggest to possess. On November 15, 1908, the Empress Dowager Cixi, the last Empress of China, died. After having ruled for nearly half a century, she was one of the longest ruling female monarchs in history. Upon her death, according to ancient Chinese tradition, a large pearl was put inside her mouth. She was known for her fondness of precious stones and was buried in a tomb along with these rich possessions. But the Empress would have no rest after death. 20 years later, her tomb was occupied and ransacked by Sun Yangying, a Chinese warlord of the Kuomintang who took away her royal treasure. Breaking the grave, they dug out the jadeite pieces, the lotus and the coral jewelry, her imperial robe, her shoes, and all the precious stones on her body. As an ultimate indignity, the looters opened the Empress's mouth and extracted the giant round pearl. Rumor has it that the pearl ended in the party shoes of Chiang Kai-shek's wife, Su Mai-ling, who showed it off during special occasions. No one knows its whereabouts today. A few months before that theft, in 1927, on the other side of the world, the director of the University Museum, George Byron Gordon, received a letter from Eldridge A. Johnson, one of the most reliable museum board members and benefactors. Johnson mentioned in the letter that he had seen and been fascinated by a large rock crystal globe at the Wanamaker's store in Philadelphia. The 55-pound ball is 10 inches in diameter, silver white, and perfect in every way. It once belonged to the Dowager Empress. George Byron Gordon was a highly respected scholar and successful museum director who oversaw the largest expansion in the history of the museum. He was also renowned for his collecting eye and his connoisseurship. More importantly, Gordon had given prominence to his tenure through what was later defined as the museum's Chinese period. A few days after receiving Johnson's letter, Gordon slipped while walking up a marble stair and fatally struck his head, dying 6 hours later. In memoriam, Eldridge Johnson gave the museum a collection of Chinese objects, including the Dowager Empress. Whatever visionary powers the Dowager Empress may have had, what is true is that no one predicted how it would continue to have a traveling life of its own, in the same way in which the pearl in the Empress's mouth would have had an afterlife in the high society parties of Taiwan while in the shoe of Sun Mai-ling. 80 years after the death of the Empress Cixi, and decades after the death of Gordon and Johnson, the Dowager Empress was widely considered the most popular object in the museum and was on display in the Place of Honor, the center of the Chinese rotunda that Gordon had inaugurated with a Chinese show. On the morning of November 11, 1988, the guards noticed that the protective glass of the Dowager Empress had been shattered and that the precious object had been stolen along with its ornate base. A valuable Egyptian figure of Osiris was also missing. Everyone at the museum was devastated. Despite the uproar about the theft and that the FBI was immediately put onto the case, the thieves apparently had done an efficient job. They had not left any tracks. Several weeks, months, and years went by, and the trail went cold, and the hopes to recover dwindled. 3 years later, Jess Canby, a researcher and previously a curator at the University Museum, walked into a pawn shop named South Street Garage Sale, just across the river from the University Museum, and saw on display a bronze Egyptian statue of Osiris that she immediately recognized. As it turned out, the shopkeeper had bought the statue from a homeless man named Al for $30. Lawrence Steinmetz, a bookkeeper in his early 30s who lived in West Mount Airy, had found both the Osiris statue and a crystal ball and had kept them at home, not thinking that they would have any value. When he had to move, he gave the Osiris statue to Al as a gift. And where was the crystal ball? Steinmetz had also given it away to his housekeeper, Kim Beckles, as a birthday present. Beckles thought it was a fun thing. He said it looked like an alien egg. Once at her home in Trenton, Beckles placed the Dowager Empress on a coffee table on top of a metal dish that she used for flower arrangements. A superstitious reader, or perhaps a fan of Raiders of the Lost Ark with a hyperactive imagination, may piece together all the loose threads outlined here with the following screenplay. The magical crystal ball, once snatched away from its original palace, had absorbed the spirit of the Dowager Empress. The desire by the museum director of owning that piece may have caused his accidental death. And after the desecration of the Empress's tomb, the sphere would be condemned to wander away from its owner, the same way in which the pearl was taken from the Empress's mouth, as a spirit in the search of her owner. But all these are hypothetical connections. All we can be certain is that the Chinese crystal sphere does inspire such mystical speculation, while at the same time retaining the diaphanous identity that has turned it from a centerpiece of an imperial Chinese palace to a tabletop decoration in an attic in New Jersey to a treasure of the University Museum.